Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Beatriz. I'm doing a master here, studying environmental law. And I'm here to introduce you all the panel 5. It's about data-based initiatives to fight climate change, going beyond the market. Several data-related initiatives have been identified whose main objective is not to correct a market failure, but to produce a common good to fight climate change. Many of these initiatives come from organizations formed by private companies, research centers, and public agencies, in a joint effort to create relevant inputs to fight climate change. Concerns about deforestation and greenhouse gas emission are some of the main issues that will guide this panel discussion. All those initiatives here are not profit. Okay,
Thank
can
you.
go, Carol.
Thank you, Maria Beatriz. So, last but not least, we have panel number 5, which is for us very important because we wanted to highlight initiatives that otherwise are not known but are very important because they are creating knowledge as well. And today we have with us our panelists. We have 4 panelists here and 1 person who is joining us online, Carolina. I don't know if Carolina can hear us. Hi, Caro.
How are you?
Nice to have you here. Okay, so we are going to start with Carolina Andrade. Carolina Andrade works for Igarapé, Brazil, and she's going to address deforestation and criminal offense. I'm going to present Carolina very briefly. Carolina Andrade Quevedo holds a master's in political science with a concentration in public affairs from the Panthéon-Sorbonne Université of Paris. She has more than 10 years of experience in public and state security leaderships, as well as strategy intelligence at national and regional levels. Carolina is currently acting as an advisor to the Igarapé Institute Climate Security Program. Carolina is going to present us the data platform EcoCrime. Welcome, Carolina.
How are you? Very glad to be here today with you. I'm not sure if I can share my presentation and you can watch it. Let me see here. Can you see it now? Yes. Great. So first of all, thanks for the host for having us here today. I'm from Ecuador. I'm based right now in Guayaquil, working currently for Igarapé Institute based in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. So very happy to share with you our project focused on the Amazon region with a special focus on our EcoCrime platform, that you will see how we are thinking about this platform and how we are improving these efforts on connecting environmental crimes, the Amazon region as a strategic region in South America, and the global climate crisis. So first of all, our project that involves environmental crimes with the Amazon region is called Regional Action to Reduce Environmental Crime in the Amazon. It's a project I will introduce very briefly. Perhaps our colleagues from Brazil know us very well. Igarapé Institute is an independent think and do tank founded in 2011. We have more than 10 years of experience working on security issues, especially public security, environmental security, and digital security in Latin America and Africa. We are over 50 people in different countries, 5 different countries. And it's a think and do tank women lead. So we are almost 80% of women in our institute. So Regional Action to Reduce Environmental Crime. As I mentioned, this project is focused on 6 different pillars. One of them focused on mapping the scope and scale dimensions of environmental crime, but that's part of a process that we are having this holistic approach to understand the dynamics of environmental crimes in the Amazon region. So that's one of the pillars that in parallel we are working also, for example, on different research that I will introduce briefly in the next slides about how currently the strategic situation in the Amazon region is what's happening in the Amazon region at this moment related to environmental crimes, and how also those environmental crimes are related also with, for example, money laundering networks. So that's another pillar, a very key pillar to understand how those illicit financial flows are fueling environmental crimes and, of course, fueling the climate crisis in our planet. So that's another pillar. We're also having a pillar, a very important pillar, working with indigenous environmental defenders. Regional consultation is also critical to develop and to bridge trust among different stakeholders in the region, especially prosecutors, police departments, and stakeholders related to law enforcement. Another important pillar is how we approach and how we can improve supply chain transparency, and working especially with the bank sector and the private sector. So here, very briefly, some of the last reports that we have launched. One important report was this typology for research. You know that in the region we have this regional approach, not only in Brazil, in the Amazon of Brazil, but also in the Amazon of Colombia and Peru. And our last report recently launched includes also a regional approach with the other 5 Amazon countries, including Ecuador, Bolivia, Guyana, Suriname, and Venezuela. So what's the objective of this first baseline research is to understand the roots of environmental crime in the Amazon basin as a region, as a whole. And it has been a work of collecting and cleaning, gathering data information from different sources, and trying to understand the dynamics, the scope, and the scale of this ecosystem of environmental crimes that we have been, that is fueling the Amazon region, and of course, mainly the women defenders, women environmental defenders, and the indigenous people that lives in this region. Some of the key partners that we are working with, especially related to law enforcement institutions, but also related to anti-money laundering institutions. So deforestation threats to the Amazon. So before using the eco-crime platform, I thought it was very, very important to let you know how we have been gathering all this information, this data, and what we are thinking to integrate into the eco-crime platform as a database that can bring this regional approach to different levels, different decision levels. So first of all, I think that everybody here knows that the main tropical forests in the world are concentrated in our rich region, Latin America, especially in South America. Recently, Brazilian new government talked about this new initiative to connect, especially this global South cooperation among the Amazon countries, but also the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Indonesia country, to try to make a bigger global call to act and to tackle deforestation in the world. Especially mainly when we see our Amazon region, we see that this region covered over 7.5 million kilometers squares, and as I mentioned here, we have concentrated over 60% of all tropical forests and 20% of water, source of water, of water, and 10% of the biodiversity in the world, with over 1,000 affluents and with more than 35 million people that lives in this space. So one of the main challenges that we see for deforestation in the Amazon region are the roads in the Amazon basin. The roads that are so-called the arteries of destruction, that also are related to this first step to start this process of land grabbing and then to develop agro industries related especially to soy, beef, but also in another scenarios as Colombia and Peru and Ecuador related, including different other agro-industries, for example, such as coffee or cacao or chocolate. So that's one of the main challenge, how we can have a more important public policy to not permit or to avoid this major expansion of infrastructure that are improving or motivating this land grabbing and these related actions to deforestate the Amazon. So that's one of the challenges, but also we have another important challenge that is mostly related to different illicit economies, the illegal airstrips in the Amazon. We can see here, especially we focus here in the Brazilian border with Venezuela, how are one of the hotspots of these illegal airstrips in the Amazon of Brazil. That means, with our studies, we have found a lot of information about this, about mining that happens in this region and how this gold that destroys Amazon people's territories are then brought to these illegal airstrips to be exported to international markets. So as I mentioned, one of the main focus or the main challenge we have for deforestation is land grabbing. Land grabbing that always happens in three specific processes. One, the clearing. As I mentioned, typically this begins with a road, with building a road. Then we have the occupation involving moving people and assets, and then commercialization land. When the land that was cleaned is then legalized. So through this process, we have different illicit activities that are happening, and that also includes, for example, can also include, for example, money laundering networks, but also other administrative crimes against the administration, for example, as the fraud to different public documents that happens, and of course related to different levels of corruption. So as we see, deforestation has been increasing has not stopped to increase during the last years. There is different reasons and codes that can explain this tendency, but the most important thing here is that we have the same scenario in the other Amazon countries. It's not like an exception in Brazil. We have, of course, Brazil concentrate more than 65% of the Amazon region, but we have the main tendency, the main projection in the other countries. So that's why we need a regional response to this regional challenge that we have right now in South America, especially for the Amazon countries. So from all the information, the data, and the evidence that we have been collecting during the past years, we have now understand that we don't have like sometimes authorities and law enforcement authorities think that we have like specific crimes happening isolated one from the other. We have, in reality, we have an ecosystem of environmental crime that is happening and destroying the Amazon. So we have, as I mentioned, dominant environmental crimes, such as public land grabbing, deforestation, illegal logging, illegal mining, agriculture, and livestock farming. But we also have converging crimes related, for example, as I mentioned, to financial and tax-related crimes, such as money laundering, but also related to violent crimes, such as homicides, threats, and of course related to trafficking crimes such as drug trafficking, human trafficking, and modern slavery. So when we compare what's happening in the different countries, we can see how this is, as I mentioned, a regional challenge that needs a regional response. So we can see the overlap of different drug traffickers organizations in Brazil and Peru and Colombia with hotspots of deforestation. Our more recent research we made a review of 369 police operations from information that was provided by the Federal Police of Brazil. We can understand better how the priorities of action to tackle this challenge have been organized from this kind of organizations, especially in Brazil, and where these the main hotspots of these operations from Brazilian federal police has been focused in what type of crimes, and of course in what part of the country, and why those operations have been prioritized in this specific slides. We can go to other details later. So as I mentioned, this is happening the same in Peru, and in Ecuador, Bolivia, Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname. So this information has been the first step to integrate information and data to our eco-crime platform. Our eco-crime platform is a geospatial platform. I think that's like the version -1 that we developed during the past 2 years. And right now we are developing the version 0.1 or the version 0.2. So that's a process that we are doing with all the information, and especially because first of all we need to understand what was happening really in all the Amazon region as a whole, in all the Amazon basin. So first of all, this EcoCount platform has the goal to map all the environmental crimes happening in the Amazon region, in the 8 countries. And of course, the main objective is to provide information at different levels to the decision-making processes. And of course, to be used by law enforcement, prosecutors, media, and activists in the whole region. Right now, I wanted to share a small video just to let you know how this platform is better right now, and then I can go to further details about the different stories that we integrate in the platform, because this platform has a more mapping side, but also a more or quantitative side, but also a qualitative side. Where we wanted to introduce, for example, specific stories of the reality of the people in the Amazon, from people that are in the first line to defend the Amazon. So I think that's another add value to this platform, that is not like only key information, but also stories that can show us the reality and the social reality that people are living.
IGARAPE Institute's Ecocrime Data Visualization Platform shines a light on the scope and scale of environmental crimes across the Amazon basin. From illegal deforestation linked to ex-rebel groups in Caquetá, Colombia, to the onslaught of attacks perpetrated against environmental defenders in Maranhão, Brazil. Ecocrime reveals how globalized supply chains for products such as beef, soy, and timber are infected with criminality. If governments, businesses, and consumers are serious about ending deforestation, cleaning up supply chains, and improving ESG metrics, they need to better understand the actors, networks, and activities driving environmental crime. More than ever, we need to get to grips with the climate security nexus. The health of the planet and our very survival depends on it.
As mentioned in the video, in parallel to integrate all the information from the different sources and for the different institutions that we are working with, we also develop a series of stories on the reality that people is living in the territories. So we have here some examples of those stories that I invite you to visit and to read it and to understand, reading these stories, this social reality, but also how that reality are connected with different environmental crimes. The stories are focused in the 8 different Amazon countries. So we have stories from the Peruvian Amazon, the Ecuadorian Amazon, Venezuela Amazon, etc. And some of the information that we are updating, that's another component of the platform. We have the big challenge to update and to have this information up to date from the 8 countries. So we are working on that. That a little bit the vision over the objective of this second level of the development of the ecocrime platform. Additionally of this, the climate and security program also is focused I told about the human rights defenders and environmental defenders, especially in the 3 countries, Brazil, Colombia, and Peru, that are currently leading the most violent countries for environmental crimes in the world. We can see here Brazil, Colombia, one of the 2 main leaders of killings of defenders, environmental defenders, during around the past 10 years. From that, this is information from the last Witness Global Witness report. And additionally, as I mentioned, the climate security program also develops a line to understand other tendencies and other phenomena and dynamics in the region, such as the relationship of this challenge with, for example, climate migration and displacement in our region, that also have different challenges. So we have this a big challenge that we need to give a response from the region. It cannot be just a response by country, but we need a regional response. So I'm not going to stop here about the high-level priorities. I think those are more recommendations for different levels of government and levels of actors, but we have this challenge, this important challenge to reduce deforestation. There was a compromise, it was an announcement that was made for the global community in the last COP, not this COP, but the last year's COP, to reduce deforestation by 2030, related, of course, by the Agenda 2030. Disrupting environmental crime is central, as I mentioned in the entire presentation, to enhance monitoring, strengthen environmental protection, expanding protection to defenders, and of course, there's a key component with the private sector working on this challenge. So we need to improve the transparency of the supply chain. We have a recent European directive or legislation that was approved, especially focused on this. So we need to improve this transparency in the supply chain and build a green economy that can be more transparent and have traceability in the supply chain. Strengthen a regional framework. That's important because we cannot respond to this challenge only as islands, but we need to respond to this challenge as a region. Regional priorities, strengthening global standards, regional framework, rule of law, upgrade environmental crime legislation in other international markets, but also at the national level. And of course, at national and subnational priorities, we need to expand this remote sensing and big data analytics that, as we can see, it's helpful to improve effectiveness and efficiency of file operations, but also to build and to plan protection and conservation policies, public policies, working also in the prevention and not only on the side of the law enforcement, but especially focused on what is the prevention side and to protect and to conserve the Amazon region. Expand integrated operations. We have been studying good lessons that different countries have developed during the past years, developing, for example, interagency and multidisciplinary teams, for example, in Peru, that integrates the financial intelligence units, the law enforcement side, the police department, but also the Minister of Environment, trying to develop specific cases that not only focus on what's the small side of the problem, but to try to understand the dynamics of the organization and to focus especially attention on the financial flows, illicit financial flows that are fueling these criminal activities. So I will close with this, and I will be expecting your questions. I'm very happy to be here today.
Thank you very much, Carolina, for your enlightening presentation. I think it's very, very valuable that you are providing with Igarapé a solution for all the problems that we addressed yesterday in the panels, deforestation, agriculture, and so on. So we are opening now the floor for questions of the public. Someone has any questions for Carolina?
Hi, Carolina. You can't see me, but I'm Sophia. I'm a master's degree program here at Mackenzie. Can you listen to me clearly?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. My question is, first of all, my master's dissertation will be about the Agenda 2030 also, not only, but also. So, but I'm not very much. I don't study much the criminal part of law, but what I want to ask you has to do with traceability, because we were talking about it in the last panel. And what I would like to know, and what I would like to have asked the other panel, if I had the time, was if with the traceability of, or with the data we have, if it's possible to isolate the companies or the producers, the farmers, etc., that don't comply with environmental law. If it's possible to, if it's interesting to isolate them. What I mean is, do we have enough data to know which of these providers don't comply with environmental law, to the point that we can not only in the criminal way, but also in a commercial way, isolate these providers, because the question has to do with if people stop buying these products that are obtained through illegal deforestation, trafficking, etc. Do you think, or do you have data to affirm that it can have an impact to suppress this type of activity?
Yeah. Thanks for your question. Very, very interesting. Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah, that's a challenge. I mean, currently we don't have all the information to be sure that this supply chain is clean, because even for the authorities working in law enforcement, it's a challenge to understand where are happening the different illicit activities. You see, for example, the different process to export gold. You have the companies that are allowed to export gold, legal gold, but we know that over 70 or 60% of the gold that is exported is illegal or come from illegal sources. So we have this information, but we cannot trace when the goal is laundered, because you land the illicit gold that comes from the indigenous communities, from sometimes different illegal hotspots, and then that gold is cleaned and is laundered as legal gold that are then exported without any idea that that gold was in fact contaminated with illicit economies and leaving blood and violence in the Amazon territories. So that's the challenge, to work together with law enforcement authorities, but also with preventive authorities to prevent these kind of crimes and to avoid that this goal, specifically in this case the gold, but we can also make the same exercise with a log or with different other products that are happening the same during the supply chain, during this supply chain that is contaminated with different illicit activities. So that's the challenge, and that's why the initiatives as EcoCrime or other initiatives or other platforms wants to improve this access to data and information to take informed database decisions.
Thank you very much, Carolina. Is there any other question?
Thank you, Carolina. I'm Germán from Max Planck Institute. I have maybe a question just to understand correctly what you're doing, because when you talk about illegality, I mean illegal activities, what do you mean? I mean, these illegal activities are already like activities that were sanctioned in a due process before, like prosecutor office. How do you define this illegality of these activities from like a legal perspective? Just to understand better, because yeah, that's my question.
It was a little bit hard to understand. What was? Can you perhaps, Caro,
Yes.
tell me something?
Yes, I can summarize. Basically, Germán asked, how do you define illegality? Because it is already prosecuted under public law and it is already been part of the legal system. So what does illegality means for you in Igarapé or for the platform? Is that your question? Yes.
That's the first question that we asked ourselves at the beginning of this project, and that's why we developed this typology of environmental to understand environmental crimes, but in reality was to understand the illicit economies behind environmental crimes, because we have different legal frameworks in the 8 Amazon countries. So we developed this typology to understand how these illicit economies are happening, because sometimes those illicit economies are happening in the territories, but they are not specifically illegal activities for different countries. So that's the challenge. That's another challenge. For example, deforestation is a crime in Colombia, but it's not the case in Ecuador. So in Colombia, they can act, and in all kind of deforestation is considered illegal. So authorities can act because deforestation is considered illegal, and including land grabbing is considered it's like occupying public lands is considered illegal in Colombia, and the people who are financing this occupation of public lands. So that's like one recent legislation that was passed in Colombia last year, and show us how they can approach this challenge related to environmental crimes. But it's not the same as I mentioned, for example, in Ecuador or in Peru, where also they are only focused on illegal logging and illegal gold mining, and they don't have a specific legislation on deforestation. But we know that there are an ecosystem of illicit economies that are related and are destroying the Amazon and are destroying the environment and the biodiversity that are related to illicit economies that are not considered illegal, but are destroying this. So that's another challenge to improve and to update legislation in these countries, and to coordinate actions among the Amazon farmers. So that's why we are doing this work, because we are trying to make more conscious authorities at different level about these different challenges.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Indeed, it would be very interesting to have in the platform, I don't know, a field that explains what are the regulations, and we can compare how they are, for example, illicit in Colombia or in Ecuador. From a legal perspective, for a comparative analysis could be very helpful. So I wish you all the best in Igarapé, and many greetings to Guayaquil. And now we are going to our next panelist, Leonardo Capelletto. Leonardo Capelletto is an environmental engineer, doctor in soil science from the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul. Currently, he's a postdoctoral fellow at the Institute of Geoscience at the University of Sao Paulo, an associate researcher in the Mamirawa Institute of Sustainable Development in the state of Amazonas. I think it's very interesting that Leonardo is today with us, because he actually represents also the methodology that we had, because he lived 3 years inside the Amazon in a very, very small town. Actually, he lived inside a protected reserve, and now he's living in Sao Paulo. So he has this double vision and can enlighten us.
Oh, it's working. Vielen Dank voor voor de Max Planck Institute, and obrigado também à Universidade Mackenzie. Primeira vez conhecendo esse campo muito bonito, and thank you for you all to heard about this subject. Well, time is short, and I have a lot to show to you. So basically, when we think about it on climate action, climate changes, we are thinking. Usually, we are thinking about in Brazil, in the Amazonian reality. We think in deforestation and other things, but the first, if I remember, the first goal of 13 SDG, it's about to ensure the strength of the resilience of these people to the changes that they will fight. So it's that I'm gonna talk to you and show a lot of beautiful pictures. So sorry if I delay a bit of the time. Basically, Brazil is a big country, and half of this area is Amazonia. And I usually bring here the map of the Amazonia, but I think that most people are going to show that. But if you see this map, almost half of this is Amazonia. So any data that we have there, anything in Amazonia, it's hard to generalize to the other parts. It's the same in Brazil, that if I think in the southernmost state where I'm born, and I say, well, here we have snow, so we have snow in Brazil. And this is not true. So in this part of Brazil, in the northeast, is a semi-arid area. And here it's the biggest amount of water in the world. So Brazil is hard when we think about data in Brazil, we need specific data to specific regions. This map is also showing, is a part of the Adapta Brazil project from the Ministry of Science and Technology, and showing the impact and the risk of droughts in Brazil. Even in a very optimistic scenario, we're gonna have problems with droughts, with the absence of water in some moments. And of course, in the northeast part, where it's the same arid area, this is expected. But we are here in this moment in São Paulo. We're gonna fight some problems with droughts and, well, absence of water in some moments. So this is not a problem only in São Paulo. I took this picture in January of this year in the harbor of Manaus. Manaus, the capital of the state of the Amazonas, and is the place where the river Solimões meet the river Negro and creates, in the words of the people that lives there, the river Amazonas, okay? So the biggest river. And then here, this is a very cool rule that's showing the maximum level of the waters in each year, almost 100 years. And if you see the biggest number it was last year. And the last one was like 10 years before. So we are fighting extreme events. This is one of the problems of the climate changes. It's not only high temperatures. This interferes in the water of the people consume too. The water that where the riverine peoples, like this woman, lives. Almost all those pictures are in two reserves, sustainable development reserves in the state of Amazonas. I didn't live inside it, living in the city that's outside of the reserve. But these both reserves are very nice. They are bigger than the city of São Paulo, where lives 20 million people. But there, in these both reserves, Sustainable Development Reserve Mamirauá, the same name of the institute, and the Sustainable Development Reserve Amanã, okay? 15,000 people lives there. It's a very few people living in a big area, okay? So a major part of these people, like 8% of the people, 80% of the people uses rainwater to all the use of the water. We don't use water just to drink. We take bath, we wash dishes, we wash clothes, and all the stuffs. And even these riverine communities always live near to the rivers. It's hard sometimes to catch the water. So the rainwater is a very good way to use water because it's a clean, it's a transparent. If you take a cup of water, it's transparent. Even it's not potable, it's a good water to these people, okay? And it's not common to use this water, of course. In other parts of Brazil, maybe in some houses, you used to water the plants or wash some things, or second use, not for all the use like these people. But in the Amazonia is the place where we have more rain in Brazil. I don't know if you know what is a millimeter of water, of rainwater, but it's basically in 1 square meter is 1 liter per millimeter, okay? So here in São Paulo, we have something like 1,300 millimeters per year. In this size, in this part of the Amazonia, is the double quantity, is the double amount of rain. So it's a lot of rain. Rain in this place is raining like almost every day in some times. So there is different seasons of the water, as the people says. In the graphic, in this graphic here above, there is the map, the graphic of the rain. So there is a lot of rains in May and less rains, not so few, but it's less rain around October. And the level of the rivers is similar to this rain, of course, because a lot of rains comes to the rivers, and the rivers flow up and down. In the region of these reserves, between the most dry season, the drought, and the flood period, there is an average of 11 meters. This is like a building of 3 or 4 floors every year, sometimes less, sometimes more. So this changes all the life of these people. So here I took 2 pictures in different mounts, in the flood period and the drought period, almost in the same position. So I just put one side of the water, and you can see that the life of people change a lot. So here there's almost 10 meters, and during the flood period, the water is getting inside the house sometimes, and in the dry period, the river is going far from the house. So in the drought period, it's a pretty hard situation when you need to use water. Basically, the people are gonna need to walk a lot, took like a bucket of water, put in the arms, and walk onto the home. I did that like 1 or 2 times, and it was a pretty hard job to do, and people need to do that every day. If we're gonna have harder droughts, if you're gonna have several and extreme events, this is gonna be a tough for these people. It's gonna be a hard situation. And these people live pretty near to the river. This is a common riverine community near to the city of Tefel where I was living, and so the water is pretty close. Any different the water will impact these people. I took this picture in other community, and here is showing another problem that the climate change will impact the life of the people. Usually people in riverine communities in Brazil, in all the Amazon is not so different in Peruvian Amazonian, lives in two kinds of houses, in floating houses or in stilt houses. In this case, in Portuguese, palafitas, in this case, it's showing a very high house. And some papers and studies are showing that the houses are increasing the height. So every time that people in a community need to build another house, usually they look where is the highest level of the last biggest flood, and they're gonna try to build above these. Of course, they don't like when the water came inside the house. So this is another problem that people is fighting. The people is feeling that. Another problem is the terras caídas, is a term in Portuguese, which is something like fallen lands, which is a kind of hydro erosion, but it's not the same. It's a bit different. It's more specific, and it's common along the Solimões River and other white waters rivers. So the water is like caving near to the communities. This community already moved to another place, caused the terras caídas effect, and they're gonna need to move again probably because it's almost taking the water station and the other houses that were near. So finishing the part of the Amazonian, I'm gonna finish soon. Here's the city of Tefel where I lived 3 years. Is in the heart of the Amazon, the pretty near of the state of Amazonas. And this picture was taken in the last big flood in the region in 2012. And this is not a pretty different situation from all the floods. The water is pretty near to the city. Here is the boat that people use. In the city, there is no road connecting to other cities. It's just boats or plane or airplane. But in big floods, the water get inside the streets and get inside some houses. And the same, here's the downtown of the city, okay? So this year, it was a big drought. This was the situation. Here's the same downtown. And here creates another problem. Some boats, the big boats like this kind here, like ferry boats, can't reach the city due to the big sandbanks and things like that. So create another problem also. And of course, the access of the water, the quality of the water is all impacted. Create problems also to the floating houses and in some boats too that have problems when they can't reach the water in time. But here is the is the Amazonian situation. But right now we are in São Paulo. And right now I came to here some months ago to make another research. I'm gonna show like 3 or 4 slides just to compare the situation. So in the Amazonia, we have a big problem. And I showed to you a lot of data, some numbers and things like that. We can't generalize that to all the Amazonia. We have a very bad situation to the data in the Amazonia when we're talking about water and other stuffs. When we can't see from the satellites from the up, we can't reach a good data for sanitation and other SDGs. So it's hard to tell if you are reaching the SDGs, if you are reaching the goals. In São Paulo is another situation. We have a big city with more than 10 million people just in the city of São Paulo, the double in the São Paulo region. And we have a lot of water crisis. This is a water crisis in 2014. in Sistema Cantareira, there is a lot of system of reserves of water connected to supply this big region. The next water crisis will occur in some years. This is almost impossible if this doesn't never more occur, okay? So there is other cities in the state of São Paulo fighting similar problems. Bauru is a city that I could say that's our laboratory city in our current project here. And Bauru is a city with 300,000 people and fight many problems because the city is vulnerable to droughts. 1/3 of the city in the south and the yellow part uses water from the Bauru River, which is almost every year have problems with the level of the water. And the other part, most part of the people uses the water from groundwater. And we are fighting some problems with groundwater in São Paulo state too. We have data about that, we need more, but some data of states of São Paulo is showing that the water of Guarani aquifer that was a big reserve of groundwater is going down 1 meter per year. And we are taking a lot of water and we're not returning almost nothing. The Guarani aquifer, we need to make like a well to catch water from the Guarani, you need to make a hole of more than 100 meters. So the rain is not reaching there very quickly, okay? What we can do to fight this problem? Just to show some solutions. So I don't like to show some problems, and don't show any solution. So we have a solution to groundwater. There is a thing, there is managed aquifer recharge, MAR. We can do that in 2 ways. For infiltration, like this park in China, you create like a park of, it's a wetland, or you can just make injection of the water directly to the aquifer that you need to improve the water. For example, the Guarani aquifer, it's a confined aquifer, so you can't recharge with just infiltration, okay? I show it to you some different situations just to, well, we can talk. We have a place where we have good technology, a good amount of money, but we have some absence of legislation or things like that to improve, to do that. And the Amazon is opposite. We don't have good data, we don't have a lot of money, and things like that. So my acknowledgements to the Instituto de Desenvolvimento Sustentável Mamirauá, Sustainable Development Institute Mamirauá, which is financed by the Ministry of Science and Technology, and also to the project Sacre. This project is still beginning, finish his first year in a 5 or 6 year project. And soon we're going to have a site of this. So the Sacre is a project from USP, the University of São Paulo. And the aim of this project is to find solution, an integrated solution to water to resilient cities. So it's totally connected to the climate changes. Project Sacre has many institutes of researchers and things like that. Unfortunately, not yet the Max Planck, but we can talk later. And also, of course, many governmental and other companies and entities. So thank you. Sorry for the delay. Here's my contact. You can find me in LinkedIn and other stuffs. And later we can talk. If I don't have time, I'm going to lunch with you, or you just send me a message. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leonardo. I would like to open the floor for any question.
Hi, Leonardo. You are yet another victim of myself. You mentioned here at the end that we have plenty of data here about São Paulo and lots of money, infrastructure, etc. But we don't have such in the Amazonia. Do you believe it is because there is no infrastructure for collecting data, because there is no interest in collecting this data, or any other reasons, because it is a very rich region. It is a region in which the whole world is interested in. So I believe there should be more data about that place. So I would like to know if you imagine which is the reason why we don't have this data, and what is the solution for this data blackout? How could we fix this? If it's by the government, if the universities should be more focused on the region, if there should be more companies involved. What are your thoughts about it, please? Because I'm getting to the conclusion that if we don't have data and we don't have traceability, we get nowhere and we go nowhere. So what do you think is the solution, if there is one? Thanks.
Great, thank you for the question. This is a very interesting question, because this is the real problem. All the world, Brazil, all the states have interest in the Amazonia. It's a pretty nice place. We have good tourism there. We have a lot of many researchers there in different areas, with animals, with people, with trees, and a lot of things. The hardest thing, it's different things. Okay, first, we have many data in the Amazonia, but sometimes it's decentralized. So we have a bit of data in the state of Amazonia, a bit of data in the state of Pará, another data in the state of, in the region of Amapá is another state. Sometimes we can compare, sometimes it's a pretty different situation. Amazonia is big, it's huge, it's bigger than many countries, it's bigger than the Europe. So imagine if you need to make a research in Amazonia. It's impossible to make a research in Amazonia from inside, from the rivers, from going there, because it's huge. You're gonna need a lot of money. So usually people in Amazonia do research in small areas. So this is one of the pretty tough situations to that in Amazonia. Another thing, universities have a lot of interest, of course. Sometimes doesn't have so much money to do, but they want to do this research. But the most part of scientists in Brazil are here in São Paulo. Most part, like, I don't know numbers, but maybe half of the scientists in Brazil are here in the state of São Paulo. So we have a lot of research in the region. And we have a lot of scientists inside the Amazonia. But if you compare like the density of the scientists per area, it's hard to compare. So Amazonia hasn't an absence of data, but it's a big place. We just can't compare the size of Amazonia with big countries like USA, Canada. It's bigger than Argentina, probably, I don't know, the size. So this is the hard situation. I don't know how we can fix these, like putting a lot of money, but I'm not talking about the double of the money. It's like multiplying, maybe to put a lot of people, a lot of equipment. And just to finish, if you need to go from one point to another of the Amazonia, by boat, you're going to spend months probably, not days. And if you need to go in an airplane, you're going to expend hours and a lot of money. So it's not cheap to do research in Amazonia. So there is many problems.
Thank you very much, Leonardo. Maybe we can collect the questions for the end, because we are running a little bit out of time. So we are going to the next speaker, Marco Rosa. Marcos Rosa is technical coordinator of Map Biomass in Brazil, a collaborative network of institutions that generate annual land use and land cover time series, Map Biomas. He's PhD in geographic at University of Sao Paulo, and he has over 20 years of experience working with geoprocessing, digital cartography, and remote sensing. Please welcome, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. I want to present our initiative that's called Map Biomas. That's collaborative land use land cover mapping, or historical and annual land use land cover mapping. Map Biomas is a network of entities that includes universities, NGOs, federal institutes of research, and some private companies, some startups in technology. We have institutional support from Instituto Arapiaú and a group of founders. And the agreement with these founders is everything that we produce is public, open, and anyone can access. That's very important for everything that I will show here. It's open to the public. Don't me get no. Okay, yeah. Well, the main I won't get in technical methodology. Just to give you a brief data of our methodology, we use Landsat images. That's the same type of image that we have from 1985 until today. It's the image that let us map since 1985 with 30-meter resolution. We use every image available, not just one image by the year. Then when you classify, when you look at one image, you can see just one picture and make a lot of confusion. As we use all the available units, we are classifying the behavior of each target. Like a tree or a forest will be very green or have a lot of biomass during all the year. When you have a crop, you have the growing season, then when they remove it. So we are mapping the behavior. That's a lot of data. We use artificial intelligence to produce this classification, and everything's processed inside Google Earth Engine. So it's cloud processing, something that took like 3 days of processing one machine, we can process in 5 minutes inside Google platform. It's distributed cloud processing amount 10,000 computers. So we have a platform, that's platform.brazil.mapbiomas.org, that has all this information that's public, that's open, and it's available in maps, in Excel files, in quantitative graphs. So we have information about land use, land cover, and transition. We have deforestation data, that's all Brazil. Secondary vegetation, we have information about the age of the secondary vegetation. We have information about irrigation, infrastructure, quality of the pasture, fire, mapping, mining, and water. I'll get into some details of this data. Every data that we launch in collections. So we are in collection 7 today. In each collection, we add more details to the map, and we extend the time period from 85 until today. The last collection is until 2021. And we are mapping 27 classes, includes forest, savanna, mangrove, and restinga. As non-forest, a natural non-forest, wetlands, grasslands, rocky outcrops, restinga also sandbanks. In farming, pasture, agriculture, detailing soybean, sugarcane, rice, cotton, coffee, citrus, and other agriculture. Forest plantation, mosaic of uses, and natural non-vegetated beaches, not natural also, beach, sands, urban area, and mining, and water. We have currency of the data. We have 80,000 random points that allows us to understand the accuracy of this data and what kind of errors we have in each of these classes that we are mapping for each of these biomes. The platform also presents all the map with the detail of the legend, you can choose what you want to see, which regions do you want to see. That's water basin, states, municipalities, indigenous territory, land, conservation units. You can choose the map, and the statistics is red for any kind of territory. That's Mato Grosso State in 1985. That's Mato Grosso State in 2020. So you can understand all the history, 37 years of the history of land use, land cover. We can see the exchange between forest, that's the dark green, between pasture is the orange one, and soy plantation is the pink one. We can see this by municipality, that's Sinop in 1985, that's Sinop in 2020. You can see in transitions in red everything that we lost from forest to soybean or to pasture. In green, everything that's recovered. We can see this by graph, how much of forest stay as forest, how much of forest became pasture, how much of forest extended to agriculture. And Excel file, that's the transition. Land use, land cover is the main source of gases that we are emitting in Brazil. That's why we are doing this map to understand all these changes. So we have also data for irrigation. That's the discussion, how much of water we use to agriculture, to produce energy, and to urban areas. The quality of the pasture, this has a huge impact. This pasture with high degradation, severe degradation, is some areas that we need to recover or to manage to increase the production in these areas. We have the map of mining, including garimpo, including all garimpo inside the indigenous territory. All this is mapped, it's free, it's available. We have the maps of fire, 37 years of the scars of the fire. We can see when they happen, what they are burning, if they are burning pasture, agriculture, or natural vegetation, the frequency of firing, the month that's occurring. And we have the map of water surface, including areas that we are losing water during these years. As everything that we produce is open and free, we are mapping now other regions. And the importance here is, it's not Brazil that's mapping these other regions. We are making regional agreements with NGOs in in the other countries, so they are mapping their own countries. So we have all the Amazon mapped, the red, the Chaco region in Bolivia, Paraguay, and Argentina, all the Atlantic forest in Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina, Pampa region, that's Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina, and first map of Indonesia. And that's the number of entities that's involved in each of these maps. So that's very important, is we are transferring the technology, the knowledge to this country so they produce their own maps. They know what's important, they know their region, what the legend should look like, so they are producing their own maps. Everything that we produce is available to download. The maps, statistics files, mosaics, infographics, the points that we use to validate, and including also all the codes. All the codes that we use to produce the maps are also available on GitHub. We have more than 1,400 scientific papers published using Mapanhão's data. The first users were the academy with the students, more than 4,200 citations in Google Scholar, more than 6,000 news using Mapanhão's data. That's very important. When the federal government tried to remove the transparency of some data, Mapanhão's was used to publish this data. And I want to talk about Mapayomas Alert. That's a new initiative on Mapayomas to fight against illegal deforestation. We have more than 11 systems that produce alerts of deforestation in Brazil. What we did is a meeting in 2018 to see how we could contribute to stop the illegal deforestation. So first, alert should cover all the biomes, not just Amazon or just Cerrado. We need to include all Brazil. We need to validate these alerts in high resolution image. We need to make sure, and a judge should be sure of the deforestation. And they need to be published in one integrated system. So what we do here is we find every system that's producing alerts in Brazil, they use medium resolution images. We validate and select the best image before the deforestation and after the deforestation. We are buying here for every deforestation an image with 4-meter resolution. And we make this image available and public. We refine the limits of this deforestation, and we overlay with all public data. That's why it's so important to have all the data from the government public and available. We've overlay with the 7 million owners from car, with 700,000 owners from CIGEF, conservation units, indigenous territory. Then we make an auditing process and we public this data. So we have a platform today from 2019 until 2022 with more than 260,000 alerts validated in high resolution image that we can search by the region, by municipality, and see if they have information about them, if they are authorized or not, if they have embargo. For each of these alerts, we have a high resolution image before the deforestation and after the deforestation. We know the owner of the land, we know the car number of each of these deforestation in Brazil. So that's an example. When you click on one of these deforestation, it will show the image before and after the deforestation, and it will produce a report with the number of the owner, number of the car number of the property, and it will be available for anyone to use. So everything that we produce is public, it's available. Even all these reports can be done using the logotype of the institution, like IBAMA. We hope now they will start working again. The states are using, public prosecutors are using. We are using in finance sector, like Banco do Brasil, if they have any deforestation, they ask to finance the agriculture production, they ask the authorization. If the owner doesn't have the authorization, it won't get the money. We're working with the traders to remove deforestation from their suppliers. So if they have deforestation, they won't be able to sell it to JBS, Mafrig, and other traders. So we have all this information. It's all public. It's open. And all the data are available. You can download all the shape files of this deforestation, or you can connect. You have a public API, and system can connect and bring this information about the limits of deforestation and the image before and after. It's also available on the public API. We have also a monitor to see how the state is working on each of these deforestation. So the federal government is acting on 13% of these deforestation alerts. The state of Minas Gerais in 34%. The state of São Paulo in 26%. So we are connecting to public database from the states, from the federal government, to see how they are acting. And we have contacts with the, I won't be able to translate, Tribunal de Contas all the tribunal, yeah, Tribunal de Contas and prosecutors, federal prosecutors, state prosecutors, to charge the states to act on this deforestation data. And we have annual reports that we are publishing showing these trends. And a panel for every state to follow when this deforestation is happening, which time of month, which municipalities, and all data that makes the profile of this deforestation. So everything is available. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcos, for your presentation. We have time just for one question. Someone has any question? Yeah, thank you, Juan David.
Marcos, thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to ask you more about how you work with traders to help them remove people of companies that are part of their supply chain but are contributing to deforestation. I understand that everything is open so anyone can enter and use it, but is there any other closer collaboration with this kind of traders and companies?
Yeah, most of the traders contracted a company to provide them support on GIS system. And we talked with them, we made a training how to use the data for all these company and traders. And like Agroecony, there is some other companies that supporting JBS, Mafrig, and we are signing agreement, technical agreement with them to make sure they are using, especially the alerts. They can use also the other data like the pasture quality, the historic information about deforestation, and secondary vegetation, but especially the MapBiomas alert. If they have a deforestation alert on any of these suppliers, they ask for authorization, and in some cases, they won't even accept authorized deforestation, especially in Atlantic forest. So we have like monthly meetings with them. We still, we are not publishing results yet, because we said that to them they only can publish that we have this partnership when they have some numbers, like the number of suppliers that was removed from their list based on deforestation data. We have that with Caixa Econômica, Santander, and Banco do Brasil. We signed it with BNDES last, I believe it's this week we signed this agreement with them. But it's all technical agreement, just to give them support to use the data. Okay, MapBiomas just produce data, we don't do advocacy. So our partners like TNC then is always asking them to commit to not buy from anyone that has deforestation.
Thank you very much. We are going now to Julia Shimbo, who represents SEC Brazil, and she is going to explain us how to measure gas emissions. And I would kindly ask you to be very sharp with the 10 minutes, please, because we are running out of time. Thank you, Julia.
Hello, everyone. Almost good afternoon. Hope that you can be awake and see some of more data. I will present here SEG, that is the Greenhouse Gas Emissions and Removal Estimating System. This also is part of MapBiomas history. MapBiomas started in this context trying to generate data for understanding better the land use changes in Brazil and also to estimate better the greenhouse gas emissions in Brazil. So the SEG is an initiative and part of the Climate Observatory that is with more than 70 organizations. It's a network, and we are divided in 5 sectors where each of these organizations do the estimations and the calculations for the greenhouse gas emissions. So the agriculture is with Imaflora, energy and industrial process is with IEMA, IPAN estimates the land use change sector, and the waste sector is by the ICLEI. We have the EcoStage, that it's the partner that developed the website and also the platforms. And we have a couple of founders that also support the system and the updated of the system and the team. This is the team of the SEG 10 and the people that are involved. And in SEG, we estimate and calculate the greenhouse gas emissions for Brazil, states. I will show also for municipality. And we have this personal greenhouse gas emissions calculator. But we also not only publish the emissions, but we publish other types of documents as about a guidebook to give some solutions, not only problems, but also gives some solutions with greenhouse gas emissions to mitigate at a local level. And we also do and publish documents that give other analysis about the greenhouse gas emissions, but also, for example, the impact of COVID in the greenhouse gas emissions and NEDC proposals and other publications, for example, for the methane emissions as well. And this is all in the SEG website. So we are now in the version 10. We started in 2012, and now we just published this year the version 10 in November 2022. And we update the data, including the last year, and we also update the method based on the national inventory published by the Brazilian government. And how we work in the SEG 10. So we estimate the emissions and removals from greenhouse gas emissions from 1970 to 2021. Every year we release a new version, updating the last year for all the sectors, except for the land use change that is from 1990 due to our time series that are available with the land use and land cover maps that we use from Map Biomas. And we estimate the greenhouse gas emissions considering the national inventories, the national communications published by the Brazilian government. We use the same method, and that is also based with IPCC guidelines. We use more than 600 sources of emissions and removals, and we produce and generate the gross and net emissions. And I will just pass through to get more in a broad view. So we have this estimation of in the Brazil, in the country level, and then we allocate these emissions for each state in Brazil, and then for each municipality, that are more than 5,000 municipalities. So, oops, okay. So for those of you that don't know about the scenarios of greenhouse gas emissions, Brazil is the fifth largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. So we are in the fifth position behind China, United States, European Union, India, and Russia. And most of the emissions, greenhouse gas emissions in Brazil, is related with the land use change that represents almost half of the emissions of the Brazilian country. And then it's agriculture, 25%, energy, industry, and waste. And when we compare the 2020 from 2021 greenhouse gas emissions, we had an increase of 12%. The only sector that we didn't have an increase from the year before was the waste sector. So we are having an increase of emissions of all sectors in Brazil, mostly in the land use change during the deforestation. And we can see that also we have these, oops, where I am here? Sorry. I can also present about morphobiomas, but Yeah, I think I pressed it here, ask. Sorry. Seg Mackenzie? Should I pass through it? Oh, you're going to represent. And then I can go. I'm almost finishing. Let me see. So we were here looking that we have now a tendency that of increase of emissions. So Brazil is going to the wrong side. I would say that we should have been reducing our emissions, but we are now increasing our emissions in the last years. And the states that are the major greenhouse gas emitters are Pará, Mato Grosso, São Paulo, and Amazonia. But if we took out the land use sector, then the major emitters would be São Paulo, Minas Gerais, Mato Grosso, Rio Grande do Sul, and Goiás. That is mostly because of the agriculture, the energy sector's emissions. About the land use change, that is where IPA, that I'm a researcher, do the estimations. In the land use change sector, we consider the emissions sources as, for example, when we have a deforestation from forest, a conversion from forest to pasture, or forest to agriculture, and pasture to agriculture, or vice versa, and also the burning of vegetation residues. But we also consider the removals. That could be the secondary vegetation, data and restoration of native vegetation, or even areas of pasture that was converted by planted forest, or agriculture by planted forest. So we use the official report of greenhouse gas emissions of the Brazilian government, and also the land use and land cover annual maps from Map Biomas that made a huge change in the estimations of greenhouse gas emissions in Brazil. So when we see the land use change sector emissions, we saw that there is comparing the last year from in 2020, we see that there is an increase of 18% of the emissions. And most part of these emissions is due to deforestation. More than 70% of the emissions are related with deforestation in Brazil. And as most of the emissions is due to deforestation, the Amazon is also the biome that has the biggest emission when we compare between biomes. So 70% of the emissions in Brazil is in the Amazon biome, and 10% is in the Cerrado, and 9% in the Atlantic forest. And where we can see that 91% of the Amazon emissions are related with deforestation. And we also, when we see by the biomes, we also see that there was an increase in the last years of the greenhouse gas emissions in the Amazon due to the increase of the deforestation. And the states with the highest emissions are Pará, Mato Grosso, Amazonas, that together represent 57 of the emissions of the land use sector. But we also, in one side, the Amazon is the biome with the biggest emission, but also the Amazon biome presents the highest proportion of removals. And this is due to the protected areas, the management areas that are considered in the removals of the emissions. Besides that, we can see the data of SEGI in the country level, in the biome level, in the state level, and see the ones that are the biggest emitters are also the lowest, with the lowest emissions. And also we can see in the municipality how these are happening. So we see that most of the municipalities, the emissions are related with agriculture and then land cover. And we can also hang and see like the top and the municipalities with the biggest emissions. For example, here is Altamira in Pará. And we can also see the change. If you see here, there is a change over the years where we can see the biggest emitters considering the municipalities in Brazil, and it's very interesting to see they are on the arc of deforestation in the Amazon, but these over the years, we are in the most recent years, we see that there is a move that are more inside of the Amazon, going to the Amazonas in areas that we used to have deforestation in these areas, and also the removals that are in the Amazon municipalities who do it to protected areas. In the other areas of Brazil is do it to the secondary vegetation. So all the data is available in the platform, as the same as the map biomas. We can see the emissions by biomes, by states, by country, and municipalities, and you can download all the documents and data in the website as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia. We are going to have the question at the end of the panel. And now we move to Marcelo de Madeiros, who represents Imaflora. At the moment, he holds the position of coordinator of public policy projects at Imaflora, where they perform evaluation and analysis activities of the main environmental policies that are in place in Brazil. Thank you very much for being with us, Marcelo, and please keep in mind the 10 minutes.
Thank you for the invitation. My name is Marcelo. I'm the Public Policy Coordinator at Imaflora. Very quickly, Imaflora is a Brazilian environmental NGO. We have about 100 employees. We have 27 years of existence. We have a lot of projects, initiatives. We make the analysis of the agriculture sector of the SEG. We are a technical partner of MAP Biomas. But my focus here, what I was asked to talk about, is our advocacy effort to open environmental databases with public authorities or public agencies here in Brazil. Imaflora is a very technical NGO, so every advocacy strategy that we have is based on science, is based on the researches and publications that we do. So we have several publications about open data in climate, forestry, and agriculture here in Brazil. And I will focus on two of them. The first one we made in 2019, when we evaluated the open data plans of 6 environmental federal offices here in Brazil. The open data plan, the PDA, as we call in Portuguese, it's an important instrument for encouraging and managing open data here in the country. It was established by the open data policy of the executive branch in 2016. And because of this policy, every single administration public agency needs to do an open data plan saying which database that they have will be released, it will be published to the society. So the open data plan that has which databases and the timeline of the openness. Very quickly, we did this analysis of 6 environmental agencies, and the big result, like the PDA needs to meet 9 criteria of quality when we talk about open data. The basic criteria, like the PDA, is valid for 2 years. It's published on the agency website. It was signed by the maximum authority of the public agency. They were attended. But the complex ones, like the public agents made a public consultation to know the demands or the opinion of the society to elaborate the open data plan. So this kind of information were missing. And another important information is the complete inventory that the agency has in its possession. This kind of information we're missing too. Why this is important? If the public agency says that next year we will open 10 environmental databases, but when we know that they have 100, we can push a broader or a better openness of this database, or we can say, okay, if you are able just to open 10 databases next year, we demand that we open other databases that we have in our catalog that is so much important for us, for the real world, than the ones that you want to open. So this study was very important because it was the first time, I think, that the environmental agencies and the CGO I think is the general controller of the union, I think that's the translation, we make like a pressure on them. Because the INCRA, for example, it's a public agency that we analyze. The INCRA, until then, it has never done a PDA. One of the strategies that use is to publish the main results of our research in a big journal in Brazil. This one we published in the Folha de São Paulo. So the headline was INCRA never has done, and the photograph of the president of the INCRA. 6 months later, they published the first PDA. So this is the result that we can achieve when we do this kind of pressure of the environmental agencies. The second one, we did the first time in 2017, when we evaluated the level of openness of the main 15 environmental databases in Brazil. And the objective was to know whether if each database was open or not, and whether if they meet some quality criteria when we talk about open data. It means the database is free of charge, it's complete, it's, how can I say, it's up to date. So we use 10 criteria to analyze all of them. And I think the big result is we could confirm that environmental databases that have a strong relationship with the private sectors, they are less transparent. Because why? At the same time that civil society can pressure to open this database, the private sector, or part of it, do the opposite. They do strategies or lobby to the government not to open this database. So this was very important because we do a lot of recommendation for each database for improvement, and we established a lot of a kind of channel of communication from each agency that has the management of these databases. In 2020, we did a second research because we would like to know if under the Bolsonaro government, if there was a change in this policy. And when we made the comparison, in overall, the level of openness slightly improved from 67% to 70%. And it was because the IBAMA in 2018, in September, they opened a lot of environmental important databases. So this has impacted the result. But we also noticed that there weren't no improvements after 2019, when Bolsonaro started to rule, but there weren't no major setbacks. I would like to present two initiatives very quickly, because we do a lot of advocacy efforts to open the data. But when the government open this kind of database, basically they release a Excel or CSV sheet with thousands or millions of lines, and we have to do like SAG Biomas platforms, instruments to make this database more user-friendly. So the TimberFlow is one project that we are developing since 2017. It makes a lot of analysis about the production and commercialization about native timber here in Brazil. We made a partnership with the ICMC, it's the Mathematics Institute of the São Paulo University, because we are developing a new tool that we can do this analysis by a company level. You put the CNPJ on the platform, and you can see all the supply chains that the company have in a specific year. So we are trying to we talk a lot about this with international buyers. We want that they use this platform to make some due diligence or risk assessment when they want to buy native timber from a specific company here in Brazil. Another one is the CIMAX, the System for Monitoring Timber Harvesting. The CIMAX network is composed by Imaflora, ICV, Design, Amazon. And basically, we did a methodology using Landsat images that we can make analysis about geospatial analysis about logging in a specific regions. So since 2020, we make this map of the logging sector in the Amazon. And for the first time in this current cycle, we could compare the images of SATA, of the Landsat images, with the official databases, with the logging authorization. So for the first time in Brazil, we could say what is the percentage of illegal and legal activity of the legal sector, which was 38% of illegality. This was very important because some people used to say the level of illegality in the timber sector of the Amazon is 70%, or they said that it's 50%. So in Portuguese we say chutômetro, right? People guess. So I would like to finish and saying that all of us, we are doing things that we can't stop guessing. I think we believe we are doing platforms, instruments, websites to like make almost a photograph of the reality of the environmental governance here in Brazil. So to do what we do, we need a lot of high level of transparency, and we believe that the advocacy efforts are essential to reach this high level. So summarizing, it's this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcelo. It was even perfect with the time, so thank you for the presentation. And now we would like to offer the floor for questions. We have time just for one question. So sorry, I know. We have the lunch, so we can discuss many more during that time. So please, who would like to raise a question regarding all these very interesting initiatives to open data? Professor Drexel, please.
Sorry for taking the floor. I'm Josef Drexel, the project leader, I would say, of what we are doing here. We have heard so much about many initiatives that collect masses of data, and the more and more I listened to you, I had the impression that we have a lot of data, and the question is more, do we make sufficient use of it? I heard, especially from the NGOs and the different institutes and so on, there were also complaints that there is not enough open data available from the government. Now we heard that there is open data. So my question is, are we really making enough use of the data? And in both directions, do the law enforcement bodies make enough use of the data that is actually provided by all those wonderful initiatives where people show huge engagements, is the state failing in this regard? And to which extent is the private sector or the NGOs are not taking enough account of the data that is already available from the states? We have all those people now on the panel, and I would like to get some insight from your experience. Where are we actually failing, and where do we have to do more? Maybe we also miss the aggregation of all that data. I don't know, but I would very much like to hear more from you. So it's not a question that I'm asking to a specific person now on the panel.
I would like just to, we did not show just data, we showed information. That's data that has been treated, we overlaid with other data, and we produced information. So we are publishing information that's ready to use. Most of the data that we show is information ready to use. We have a lot of institutions using this data. So we have state prosecutors, we have the state, but like the state doesn't have enough people and infrastructure to use the data that we are providing. The federal government, I won't even comment. They didn't even try. They stopped using any data. They refused to exchange or even to talk with Mapbiomas last 3 years. The people were not allowed to talk with us, even to use our data. This will change, hopefully. And but yeah, we have the will of the government, the will that will change now with this new administration. We had an administration that didn't believe the Earth is rounded, so they still believe the word Earth was flat. So we couldn't just provide scientific data, and even with the scientific data, if there is a will not to use, not to act, so what we have to do is to make pressure to make the government use. So we went to federal prosecutors, we are training judges on how to use the data, how to interpret the image to make sure the data will be used as proof in other instances of justice. So yeah, we advanced a lot. We still have a lot to do. We still have a lot to guarantee the government will have transparency and to have better data. Like we have 7 million owner, the property with geometry, or the owner and where it should be protected. The legal reserve of 7 million properties in Brazil, but they are not validated. The state doesn't have people enough to validate it. We have a lot of overlays of this data. So we still have a lot of challenges, but the data has been used a lot. And again, it's a lot of information. We have a lot of ready-to-use information. We have media using. We have a lot of newspapers and a lot of information. We have a lot of knowledge building, a lot of papers, like I said, more than 1,000 papers published using this data. So it's consolidating this knowledge. But yeah, we still have to make a lot of pressure in the government to make sure the data will be used.
Just to complement, related with the SEG, I think that as Mapbiomas and SEG, or even CIMEX, they are civil society data that is another source of information that could be available to the society in a very transparent way, not only in data, but also in method. And that sometimes even the data from civil society is even more updated in detail, that this could also pressure the government to have a better data and updated data in a faster way. and at the same time, related with the SEG, the greenhouse gas emissions system, the states now, as we do this comparison between the states, and we highlight the states with the highest emissions, the states also wants the partnership to use the SEG data to build their plan and construct their plan about actions to mitigate and adapt for greenhouse climate change. And the municipalities, as we show there, and we publish the top list with the biggest emitters in Brazil, for example, Altamira, they don't want to be on the top list. And so we also talk to how we can do actions to reduce the emissions as well. And then we publish also the guideline to the action. So I think that it is another case. But I think that we also need to monitor the impact of all this data that is being generated in actions that can, for example, reduce the deforestation or restore areas that are degraded.
Yeah, maybe, no? Okay. So, Carolina wants to say something? No, okay. I would like to thank to our 5 panelists. It was a very enriching discussion, and I also would like to encourage you to continue creating knowledge, because the civil society has also has the will, as we can see, and hopefully this will be used by the authorities to create better policies. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I would like to invite you to have lunch.
Thank you all. Before moving to the lunch, I know, are you hungry? Yes? Yeah, I believe it. No, please, the panel is over, but before lunch, I'd like to invite Professor Joseph Drexel for the closing remarks of the workshop. So thank you very much. You can move to your seats, and in a couple minutes, we will have lunch.
Now it's also for you to blame me if I stand too long between you and the lunch. So I have to. I should make my conclusions very short. Actually, it's very difficult to come up with comprehensive conclusions. And during the last couple of minutes, I tried to make sense out of it. I guess you are also in the process of doing this. And you will understand that this is particularly difficult. I would like to get back to the second panel for a moment, because the last 3 panels have been very, I would say, very down to the facts, to the kind of data that is collected and so on. But the second panel, that is actually our focus for the work that will follow, because we also have to draw our conclusions for maybe possible recommendations on how the law should develop. And the second panel had the focus very much on horizontal legislation, like competition law, data protection law, and so on. And I would also like to recall what we heard from Senegal, because in the Senegal workshop, we already had the insight that there is now in many jurisdictions, we see a lot of legislation concerning horizontal laws, especially data protection law is a very good example for this. And when different jurisdictions are doing this, there might be a risk that legislators think, oh, we've done the job, but that's not the case. And I think what I take from here, it's another confirmation that our approach to look at the different sustainable development goals, which automatically lead us to a more sector-specific perspective on the issues, show that much more needs to be done. And the sector-specific analysis may also tell us where we may also need to adjust the horizontal routes, where we need additional routes, maybe also sector-specific regulation. And in this regard, I think this workshop here was also enormously fruitful. There is one very important question that our project tries to answer, where are the obstacles for data sharing? And I think as regards the workshop here, we have heard very, very little about obstacles for sharing. I think one of the reasons for this is that the topic here in Sao Paulo did not specifically regard the business sector, where we have many, many strategic reasons for not wanting to share the data, keeping back the data, also to dominate other markets, aftermarkets and so on. That's not a particular problem when it comes to climate change and so on, where quite another group suddenly appears, and that's civil society. And I think that is what I like most, frankly speaking, because I adore the Brazilian society for being so strong in initiatives, especially in the field of protection of ecology. I have been here in Brazil 4 years ago, and I spent 3 months, and one of the nicest experience I had in Brazil was going to the Museo de Amanhã in Rio, a very modern museum, and I went there just after the election of President Bolsonaro, and to see the cliff between what it has already been achieved in Brazil for educating people about the environment, and then where politics, we just talked about it, where politics basically is acting against it for whatever reasons, and that is deplorable in a way, and the more fascinating it is how I think during the last 4 years civil society continued to work and had to fill a gap. It has just been said, to actually inform the public, to create an environment that will maybe also change the political scenario. And I think your work has been enormously important, not just to inform the Brazilian public. It's the interest outside of Brazil is enormous for very obvious reasons. So therefore, I think that the collaboration between the civil society and the state is so important, and to think about more collaboration, more intensive collaboration, and that may go beyond what our research interest is. I think we stepped over what our interest for actually exploring was. I would like to get back a little bit more to the business sector. And here we also saw quite a bit of overlap with the Senegal workshop, because we saw here also some initiatives, also business models that actually try to help farmers, also smaller farmers, for actually getting gains in terms of reducing costs and at the same time protecting sustainability. So I think that is also a very important insight, that promoting the livelihood of people who do farming and the ecological aspect go hand in hand. There is no fundamental conflict there. We much more see the conflict between big business in farming and almost industrial interests, also by traders, by the way, the big traders, and also the farming in or agriculture and food production in Europe, because beef production in Europe is a major consumer of soybeans from Brazil, right? And we should not forget about this. So that is yet the other dimension that we need to take into account, that we live in an international economy. However, regarding the business sector, I would like come back to the discussion we had yesterday in panel 2 on whether we can actually make better use of competition law for achieving better ecological results, protecting the environment, also as a means to solve the climate crisis. And here I have some doubts whether the perspective is really focused enough. What occurred yesterday, I felt a little bit that, or let's put it that way. There are two overlapping issues here with competition law. The one is competition law in the digital sector. The other one is competition law in with regard to green goals, green competition law as it is typically framed. And they are overlapping. And yesterday we talked very much about green competition law, which is absolutely fine. However, I think for markets, information is important. Why is this so important? I think we have to stick to the fundamental principles of competition law, and then we have to look at the consumer. The consumer should decide what kind of products the consumer wants. And consumers increasingly like to prefer and want to also engage from a civil society's perspective. Consumers are part of the civil societies, and many of them now want to engage in more ecological consumption. So I think in competition law we should rather focus on that aspect and not buy this story that maybe agreements on ecological standards among firms are the better form of regulation. I'm very skeptical about that perspective, and I think we should keep the two rather separate. And also in this regard, I think we also have to do regarding sustainability and climate change and protection here in Brazil. We also have a huge task in Europe, because consumers are also sitting in Europe and in the rest of the world. So I think that is also a huge dimension. So the fight against climate change has to take place on all levels of the supply chain. We have talked a lot on the supply chain. It starts with environmental crimes, and it ends with consumer information in Europe. Germany has just adopted a law on information on the supply chain, which also regards social aspects like child labor. And I also think that was another topic that in other countries criminal law has to change. And there are very good examples where we nowadays apply criminal law to crimes that occurred elsewhere. Think about child pornography, or think about Germany has very good experience in this regard by applying criminal laws to torture. If you get hold of a torturer from Syria who appears in Germany and is arrested, and this person was convicted, it was a major case for the development of international criminal law. And here I come to my very last point. We heard it from you in the last panel, on the last panel. Why doesn't Max Planck not get more involved? And here I have to say we are only one institute of the Max Planck Society. There are more than 18 nowadays. And there is one new one, and I hope that they will engage more regarding these topics. And that's a new Max Planck Institute for Research on the Anthropocene. What is this all about? The Anthropocene is an emerging new term for a new era of the world, right? Now the world is not made by whatever natural factors, like an ice period or whatsoever. It's the human factor that changes the world, and that is also what we have been talking about here, and it shows how interdisciplinary this becomes. Actually what I can also communicate to you is that we have now a wonderful network among legal institutes within the Max Planck Society that actually work on Latin America. There is the Institute for Public Law that focuses on development of democracy and constitutions in Latin America, the rule of law in particular. I'm now very much interested in what the Institute for Criminal Law is doing. So when I get a chance, when I will get a chance to talk to my colleagues, I will ask them, because I can see that also within the Max Planck Society, we would have also a lot of common ground to actually do more research on the topics we were discussing yesterday and today. In the afternoon, we will have a meeting among our partners of the group, of the research group, and discuss what we will make out of it. It's now a very crucial point I have to add for our research, because now we have to go back to our study room as a group and discuss what will be the next steps, and that's not so easy. The point will really be that we have to draw conclusions for the future development of the law. Thank you again. Muito obrigado to Vicente and the whole team. We had a wonderful event. We spent 2 wonderful days. It couldn't have been better. It was enormously excited. I heard it from all different participants that we never got bored. That's for true. And now I think I hand back to you, because you are on the program, and maybe you want to say a very few last words.
For 2 days, we had an intensive journey of debates, exchange of ideas, different and complementary points of view. In sum, a joint effort to discuss and ponder the data sharing and climate action in Brazil. Mackenzie was the stage where different actors from a variety of backgrounds came together. Germany, Senegal, India, Ecuador, Chile, Colombia, Italy, Spain, and of course Brazil, where multiple nationalities joined together efforts to address a goal that goes beyond Brazil. It is a mandatory topic for the world. Once again, thanks to Professor Joseph Drexel and Max Planck Institute for Innovation and Competition for bringing us together for this project. Allow me to thank those at the core of the workshop who made it possible. From Max Planck Institute, my special thanks to Carolina Banda and Herman Johansen. From Mackenzie, Professor Juliana Bruzio, PhD and LLM candidates Giovanna Failash and Maria Beatriz Monteiro, and undergraduate student Lucas Morimoto. A very special thanks to PhD candidate Cristiane Bendini, which efforts and commitment were essential to make this workshop happen. Also from Mackenzie, Giovanna Guilherme, Sofia Donário, Douglas Ferrante, Vinícius Cervantes, and Gustavo Altomari all joined the team for the preparation of the workshop. I'm grateful to all members of the team involved who travel from different parts of the globe to be with us. Begonia Gonçalves Otero, Minata Sar, Shraddha Kulari, Aru Iscaria, Jörg Hoffmann, Mor Bakun, and Vikas Katuria. Thanks to Mackenzie Law School, Mackenzie International and Interinstitutional Cooperation Coordination, Mackenzie TV, and all Mackenzie staff involved, represented by Lucas Henrique Silva Barros from the Law Graduate Secretary. Last but not least, thanks to you who came from different parts of Brazil and the globe, who joined through Mackenzie TV on YouTube, for sharing your precious time and knowledge, which made for a remarkable workshop. In almost 1 week, we will be celebrating Christmas. Different races, ethnicities, creeds, and cultures are not exclusionary. On the contrary, they show the richness and capacity that human beings bring within themselves and make us a single humanity, a big family of brothers and sisters around the world. Christmas is the celebration of universal fraternity and the reunion of this great family. The Christmas of Jesus has a meaning for all humanity because God loves everyone and his fatherhood extends to all humanity. May the celebration of Christmas renew our efforts to experience universal fraternity. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a safe trip back home. Thank you very much.